Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about language development and how children develop language naturally, non-disabled students. Okay, so the child that is a year to a year and a half usually say 13 words a day up to 6 years. So throughout all those years, every day they're saying 13 new words, possibly, just through verbal talking. When the child gets to 2 years old, they're speaking about 500, and the first 20 words are all nouns. So ball, bat, plane, cat. When the child turns 3 years old, they're speaking about 1,000 words, and 80% of those words are what we call core words. Give it to me. I want that. That's mine. You know? So core words, not nouns so much. At the age of 5, children are typically speaking 5,000 words. So when we talk about students that are a little bit more involved, you have to have faith that they are going to be a communicator. And typically those kinds of kids communicate through gestures and prompts and pulling your arm and going, right? And they're communicating, they're just not saying words. So communication is the key. A lot of times kids like that have a communication breakdown, and then what happens? Full-fledged tantrum out on the floor, biting, kicking, screaming, hitting, running, right? Which is all what? Communication. It's still communication. It's negating, it's saying, no, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do, so I'm going to kick, or I'm going to bite, or I'm going to scream. So we need to provide communication that is effective for those kids to be able to say, stop, I'm finished, or I want more, right? All kids, all people communicate. If you have a husband or a wife or whatever, you know communication is sometimes not as transparent with that person. You have like little facial expressions you might do, you know, with your spouse or whatever. So you're not always using words to communicate, right? You use body language to communicate. Communication allows for people to have access and control over their lives. You know, kids that are in wheelchairs or kids that have, severe motor problems, a lot of times we're acting on them, always doing things for them, and that's not really powerful for them. They want to be able to control what is in their environment. And so communication gives them that control. All right, so many people communicate, like I said, in many different ways for different purposes. Some are more effective than others. When a kid's communication breaks down, behavior replaces that, and it's usually negative behavior, right? Oftentimes we'll get called to come and observe a student, and that student's already had a full-fledged communication meltdown, right? And so we need to be able to build on what they're saying with that non-verbally. So the only prerequisite to start what you're going to learn today is opportunity, right? If nothing is happening in that environment, then what is there to communicate about, right? You walk into a classroom and you're like, well, what's going on here? There's no structured activity happening. Everybody's just kind of doing their own little thing. Johnny's spinning. Susie's flickering over here. There's no activity. There needs to be an activity happening so that communication can be implemented. All right, so a child who is verbal is exposed to language. Look how many times. Look how many hours a day by the age of 18 months old before they say, Mama, Daddy, right? So I'm looking at that baby, I'm going, say Mama, Mama, Mama. I do it for that many hours before I expect the child to say back Mama to me. Do I stop saying Mama to the child because they don't say it back? Never. We always do that for babies, right? Typically functioning children. We talk to them, we model, we do it over and over again for multiple reasons in different environments. Everybody in the family does it, right? Until one day he says Mama, and everybody's like, yay, Mama! If we did that for kids that do not speak, Look how long it would take for a child using AAC, or picture communication. If we expose them to AAC, we just expose them to 10 minutes a day, right? We come in, maybe speech therapist comes in, works with them using their talking device or using their low-tech communication device. At the rate that we do this, they would be 84 years old before they would start doing this effectively back to us. So what's the problem? We're not doing it enough. We're not doing it enough. We're not modeling it enough. If we do it for a month and they never do it back, then we're like, oh, that doesn't work. That's not working. I know what he's talking. I know what he wants. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody tell me, oh, he can't use that. I know what he wants. Oh, this is what he wants. Really? You think that's good for one person on the campus to know what that child wants? Because what happens? If this other para or this other person that comes in doesn't know what Johnny wants, what happens? Johnny has a full-fledged meltdown, right? He's kicking, he's screaming, he's running, he's biting, hitting. So my point with that is that we have to model. And in the beginning when you're modeling, they don't need to even look at it. And I mean, you could disagree with me about this, and that's fine. But what I mean is, like, I'm just modeling. That's the same thing I said about the baby and saying mama. Just because they didn't say it back, did I stop saying mama? No. Just because they're not looking at my visual pictures, I'm not going to stop using them. Every time I tell him, oh, you want more? I'm just going to point some more. I can have it on an apron, right? And I can point more. And I say more and point more. Does he have to come back and tell me more? Tell me more. Tell me, no. You don't have to in the beginning. I'm going to model and model and model. I could model for 2 months and he never do anything with it. You might disagree with me about this. But even after 2 months, if he's still not doing it, I'm still modeling. I'm teaching. I'm going to continue to do that forever and ever, amen. With a child with a severe disability, I might do it for 12 years without ever, It's just best practice. It's just what you should be doing as a teacher, is modeling nonverbal communication. Those kids that you have on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, right? They're going to pick up on this. They don't even have to be looking at it. I don't know if you have these kind of kids, but a lot of times they'll be looking over here, and I'll have their communication here, and they'll do that. Did you see that? I mean, you might not have seen it. They'll do that. And sometimes you don't even see them do that, but they can see it, peripheral vision, right? They don't have to look at it. A lot of times they're like, look. A lot of times kids on the spectrum, they have like superpowers. I think they all should wear capes because they can see things without looking at them, right? And if you have a kid like that, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not making that up. I've seen it. All right, so here's this actual definition of AAC. So augmentative is used by those who have some speech but are either unintelligible or have limited abilities using speech. So they can't produce the sounds. They don't have the motor ability in their mouth, right? Alternate communication is used when a person has no speech but must rely on another method to make all their ideas, wants, and needs known. Sometimes if you're working with kids on the autism spectrum that have a lot of sensory issues, they don't want to hear themselves talk. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about what your voice sounds like to your own ears? Sometimes it's invasive for kids that have stimulation problems. Like, I'm hearing something ringing back there. You hear that? It's the air conditioner.
Want me to turn it down?
No. I'm just saying I can hear that, but I, as a normal functioning, I guess, cognitive individual, I can block that out while I'm talking to you. But some people on the spectrum, they will be like, oh, that ringing. That's all they can think of. So they can't, that ringing on top of the voice coming out their mouth back into their own ears, overstimulated, right?
They
so
whisper.
I do believe that some people, not all kids, okay, but some kids, they choose not to speak because it's too much noise, right? All right, So the purpose of AAC is to increase and improve a child's ability to achieve the basic communication functions, right? When I communicate with somebody, I am expressing what I know or what I want to that person. And AAC can provide a solution that will enable the student to efficiently communicate that, right? Like, yeah, we want them to speak. Yes, we do. We want them to speak if they can. But what do we do in the meantime to stop the communication breakdown from happening? We have to provide alternative ways for them to get their ideas across, right? So that the meltdown doesn't happen, all right? There's no specific skills that the child needs to have to start something like this. You start it the minute they breathe air, right? You can start it whenever. It doesn't require a certain, thing to happen. So if you're working with a child that's really involved, what's the first 2 words you want to teach to that child? Or what's a possible 2 words that you might want to teach to a child who's really involved cognitively? More.
Yeah, more.
More and finish, right? More and finish. Starting an activity, wanting more of that activity, and saying, no, I'm done with it, right? How to negate, how to say no, no more. A lot of kids will push things away. What does that say? It says, I'm finished. I don't want it. Even though you might argue with your coworkers that we don't know cognitively if that's what he means when he pushes away. You know what I mean? You can argue to the cows on. We don't know. But when he pushes away, it's a negating movement. I don't want that anymore. Now if he pushes the toy away and then he looks down at it when it falls, that might be something different, right? Because he might just want to see it fall. See it fall, see it fall, see it fall, right? But if he pushes it away and then nothing else happens, then it could possibly be that that's not what he wants to play with. That's not the activity he wants to do. So then you would model, finished, right? Oh, you're finished. And you would perceive that to mean finished, and you would condition that response to mean finished. And if you do it, and the speech therapist does it, and the mom does it, and everybody does it, guess what that child learns? That's how I can say finished. I've learned finished. Right? I can say I don't want that. It's finished. But the child will never learn if you don't attribute meaning to the action. Right? The child will never be able to learn that. And guess what? You might have to do it how many times? For 4,000 hours. Right? Never give up. Never stop trying with a child that doesn't speak your verbal language. If I can say anything today and stress anything is never give up on communication for a child that doesn't communicate through spoken word. And always model. Always model. It's different. Keychains, wallets, eye gaze boards are all different ways of making something, right? And you can use them across, you can use low tech with mid tech and high tech. It's okay. You're not going to bring that $15,000 device to the pool, to the community pool, are you? I mean, you might, but it's to stay on the wheelchair. You're not going to bring it down to the pool, because if it falls in, then everybody's freaking out. So when you talk about devices, you have static, dynamic, you have language acquisition through motor planning, LAMP, and you have text-to-speech. So static is going to be your devices that when you hit the switch, one message sounds, right? Dynamic is going to be when you hit a choice or a category, you're going to get an array of things to choose from. Dynamic. And then LAMP, again, like I said, is language acquisition through motor planning. So it's that motor plan that the child remembers how to say the sentence. So it's more physical. And then text-to-speech, of course, if that child can type words, they can just type words in to communicate. All right. So a static display, just in detail, is a fixed set of things. It can have levels. You can, on AAC device, have different levels, and you can program different messages on that one hit. It's a little limited because the number of language, due to the size of the device, you can't put all the rich language in there. So if you're just beginning and you have a child that you're not quite sure what you can expose them to in the beginning, then you might, choose to use that. And it can have environmental control, so it can turn on lights and music and different things like that to give that environmental aspect of the switch or of the communication device. A dynamic display, again, like I said, it changes the symbol set. When you choose, a lot of times that symbol will be in a folder, and you open up that category and it'll give you an array of choices. So if it's like snack time, you can hit the snack time folder and it opens a whole nother array of choices for snack time. And it has a larger amount of language. Okay, so LAMP, like I said, it stands for Language Acquisition Through Motor Planning, and you learn what they call a sequence. The child learns a sequence. So when we start typing on a keyboard, we learn what they call the QWERTY sequence, right? I told that in a training a couple of weeks ago. They're like, QWERTY? What's that? I'm like, look at your keyboard. It says QWERTY on that middle line. That's why it's called the QWERTY keyboard. They're like, I didn't know that. I was like, wow. Okay, everybody, you learned something new. So we learned that, right? We have a motor plan for where those keys fall underneath our fingers, and we learn to type without looking. So basically, this type of example is like the child would be learning motorically where that language is to communicate. And so they can eventually not have to look at the symbols. That's why when you do LAMP, it doesn't matter what those pictures look like. Don't you love them? Those pictures? I'm a visual, freakazoid. I like the pictures. I like them to look pretty, right? And them to have meaning. But when you're doing LAMP, just get over it. It's not about you. It's about the child communicating effectively. So LAMP is a really rich language, so like the child could learn language just like in English, like we use language, like it just slips off the tongue, We don't have to be looking for it in a category somewhere. All right? And then text-to-speech, of course, is pretty self-explanatory. The child learns how to type. The device, they type it on the device speaks out loud for the child in the sentences that they type in. Okay, so vocabulary selection, this is one of the most difficult things when a team gets together and tries to decide, okay, we know this child needs something, but where and what vocabulary set do we start with? Okay, so let's just look at that a little bit. I want to make sure that I have enough time. So when you're thinking about vocabulary, in the speech therapy realm, you have something called core and fringe. So on my apron today, I have core vocabulary. These are not nouns. These are words that I can use in every single environment for multiple purposes. I can say, I want that, right? I can say, I'm finished. I can say, more. Right? I can go over here and say, what? I don't understand what? I can say, I need help. I don't understand, I need help. And I can say, stop it. I'm finished. I mean, not finished, but stop. Patty let me know that stop and finish have two different meanings, by the way. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's the same thing. I'm stopping something, I'm finished. She's like, no, Patty, explain that. Explain how you told me about stop and finished.
Oh.
Because I didn't know.
That finished is like the activity is over, or, I'm done doing this. Stop is, could be other things like stop touching me, stop doing that. You wouldn't say finish touching me, you're going to say stop it. That's more of like an action type of thing in my mind.
It is. And I didn't
doing this.
Finish is more of a procedure is ended, and stop is more of a lesson.
Yeah. Okay, so you got to think about those functions of the language, so that you can model it appropriately. And I think that's where we're kind of missing the boat, is that we're not practicing this foreign language. We need to practice doing this. I know as a teacher, I didn't know how to do it, and now that I've practiced it, I've used it in practical applications, then I can model it better. Okay, so fringe and core. Whenever you're picking a vocabulary set, how are you going to visually represent that system? Again, are you going to have to use real objects? Or can you use miniature objects? You have what they call true base icons or tobies, the shape of what the thing is. So If you have a child that doesn't look at the pictures, you can try making some communication icons that are shaped the way that thing is, but know that you can't use that with core because you don't know how to shape want, you know what I mean? That's mainly for nouns. You can use, of course, I said photographs earlier. We think photographs really work well with some students, especially those that are on the spectrum. They really like photographs. When you're using photographs, be really careful not to have it too visually busy because that child may pick out things in the background and think that that's what the picture is representing. So you want to actually maybe just put that thing with a solid background and just take a picture of that. We have real drawings, line drawings, and we have the written word. I've gone to the classrooms where the teacher is using the written word and she's writing all these different messages everywhere and it looks like, oh God, chaos. I'm like, where are the pictures? I want pictures. Why all these words? I feel like I'm getting attacked by letters. It's important that you use an inventory of that environment so that you can create something that's going to work in that environment. It's very important for you to see what those non-disabled peers are doing in that environment so you can figure out what you need to supply the child to be able to do that same thing. A lot of times we get stuck because we're not looking at that general ed population and what it is they're being asked to do. If you're like, I don't know what to get him to do. What are his peers doing? Can he do what his peers doing without any accommodation or without anything? And if he can, then that's the thing that's going to be utilized the most. Let's just be honest, y'all. You know, if he can be in that environment and you can accommodate him with something that's already in that environment, that's going to be utilized. If you bring in this other thing that everybody thinks is foreign and he doesn't want to be seen with, guess what he's never going to do? He's never going to use it. I mean, this is all cute and stuff, right? That's awesome. But I mean, a lot of times we overthink things. So you need to look at that gen ed population and that environment, if he's being included, and figure out what are those kids doing and how can I get him doing that with the least amount of baggage, or whatever you want to call that, right? So you want to write a script for the activity. This is really important. If he's participating in an activity in a group, you want to have that language that all those other kids are using in a way where he can use that language too, and you can model it. Because in the beginning, he may not use it at all. But he might be telling you non-verbally, this is what he wants. But you want to model this kinds of communication, what we call core language, right? When everybody says, I want it. How can he say, I want blue, or I want, green? He can point to the color green, and he says green, I want it. But how can you expand on that sentence, right? All the other kids, the teacher's modeling, expanding on that sentence auditorily. How do you expand on that sentence for a child that's saying, I want green, I want green? You would have a core board, right, which you're going to make hopefully today. You would have a core board and you could model, I want green, right? You want to expand non-verbally on that sentence, okay? And it can't always be a test, right? You can't always be holding it up going, show me green, come on, show me green. That's not communication, y'all, that's assessment. Those are two different things. It can't always be a test. Communication should be about commenting, requesting, right? Responding, refusing, saying, no, I don't want green, I want purple, right? So it can't just always be about, show me that you know your colors, point to the color, let me ask you. We want them to be able to express their feelings. We want them to be able to say, I like the book, I like it, or I don't like it. I like Thomas the Engine, or whatever they like the best, okay? 80% of the words we use in the human language are core vocabulary words, okay? Not nouns. So when you teach how to use core vocabulary, you're actually teaching that child how to talk to other people 80% of the time. No matter what the activity is, no matter what the people are in the environment know, 80% of that time that child will be able to express what they want to say, right? And then you'll eliminate what? Behaviors, inappropriate behaviors, right? Fringe vocabulary is that vocabulary that relates specific to that activity. So if you're in a learning center and it's dial play or whatever, you would have that fringe vocabulary available so the child could say, I want that baby. I want that baby. So they might have their core board on them or maybe on a sleeve or something, and they could point it out, I want baby bottle, or I want blanket for the baby, right? If they grab the blanket, you could model, oh, you want the blanket, okay, you can have it, right? You would say it and model it, right? With no expectations that they get to point it out. Okay, it's okay, they don't have to point it out. You just are modeling that foreign language. You're modeling that core vocabulary. Okay, don't forget letting them initiate through communication, right? They might want to say, can I play? They might be grabbing a toy from another kid. What are they saying? I want a turn. Can I play? And then you'd say, oh, you want a turn. I don't have turn right here, but you would say you want it. Requesting, again, that was modeling requesting. Commenting, I like that baby, or I like that truck. Have it reoccur, I want another turn, again. Can I do it again, right? And then stop or finished, I'm done with that. All those things are probably being said with body language, but how many times do we model nonverbal? Right? How many times do we have something in the environment that when we say to the child, oh, you're finished, are we pointing it out? Right? For those that are using PECs, you could have a system where you do that, but a lot of times PECs is a lot of nouns in the beginning, right? Because it's like Cheetos. Oh, you want those Cheetos? Okay, tell me you want Cheetos, and then you wait for them to give it to you, and it's just that. But then you ever have an opportunity to say, oh, you like them. You like Cheetos. I see you smiling. You like it, right? Younger students have trouble sometimes selecting their own vocabulary. You have to put it out there and model and teach it, okay? They'll never learn if you don't do it for 4,000 hours. I did this all the time. I programmed vocabulary into the devices that I wanted. It was like, oh, this is for this activity, I want it. You know, it's something but I very seldom would look at what the child's wants and needs were and say, oh, I maybe should put that in there for them, because they're already non-verbally communicating this, so then you need to represent it in another way. Talking to the parents about what they're non-verbally communicating at home. Are they protesting at home? Are they saying, I don't want that? Are they asking for certain things at home? We were working with a child that was really, really involved, and we were really struggling, trying to figure out what language, what vocabulary do we start with. And she gave me an example. The child started to cry. She picked her up. She stopped crying. I was like, oh my gosh, she's ready for you to model up. I want up. You know, a really low functioning child, low cognitive functioning child, 5 years old maybe, right? But if that's all you have, that's where you begin, right? She cried, her mom picked her up, she stopped crying. So now you model, oh, you want up, right? You would push a button that said up, or you would point to a picture that said up. You're telling me up. Okay, I'm just modeling. Remember, I'm just saying, mommy, come on, say mommy. So I'm just modeling in the beginning. And you could be modeling for how long? Forever and ever and ever, right? Never give up.